Hello, I'm Dr. Amaleya Goneos-Malka. Welcome to Womanity, Woman in Unity, the show that celebrates women's milestone achievements in their struggle for liberation, self-emancipation, human rights, democracy, and much more. Joining us on the line today for our series on women in the judiciary is Judge Harshila Kooverjie from the Gauteng Division of the High Court in Pretoria. This show marks the last in our series on women in the judiciary, where High Court judges from the Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, and now Gauteng have shared their personal journeys and highlighted various aspects of the judiciary and South African legal system as we reflect on Women's Month. Whilst much has been done to advance gender equality, there is still much left to do. And bearing this in mind, I want to open today's show with a quote from Michelle Obama, former First Lady of the United States of America, who said, "No country can ever truly flourish if it stifles the potential of its women and deprives itself of the contributions of half its citizens." With that said, welcome to the show, Judge Kooverjie.
Good afternoon, yes, thank you. It's an honor to be on your show.
Judge Kooverjie, besides all of the work that you do in the legal space, you have had a myriad of interests prior to your appointment to the bar. And some of these roles include Deputy Chair and Member of the Council for Medical Scheme, Member of the Financial Services Board Tribunal, a Member of the Appeal Board of the Financial Intelligence Center, a Member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, and Chair of the South African Revenue Service Tax Board. These are all incredibly important institutions which contribute to society and shape the respective disciplines that they govern. What motivated you to participate in these structures?
Yes, I'll tell you now. I just want, more importantly, I was also a member of the Legal Practice Council. And the Legal Practice Council is the regulatory body that regulates the entire legal profession. And that is where the whole issue about gender parity and women's, that women lawyers are protected and have equal opportunities. And that's where most of the work that I did concerning just the socioeconomic and the upliftment of women academically was involved in that segment. But coming back to your question, sitting on all of these boards wasn't something that I just lifted my hand and went and I got in. It was I was actually handpicked to sit on in the services industry boards, that's the appeal boards, but on the Council for Medical Schemes I applied and the minister obviously accepted my nomination. But serving on these boards, we must understand that they are all part of government institutions. In other words, they are regulatory bodies which are appointed either through the Finance Ministry or the Health Ministry or the Minister of Correctional Services, insofar as the Legal Practice Council is concerned. And these bodies are there to regulate and ensure that certain environments comply with the law and that, in the greater political, economic, and social sphere of South Africa, and that our citizens are protected. For example, the Financial Services Board, a simple thing like a broker will steal pensioners' money and they don't even know what would have happened to their money. So they can come to the Financial Sector Conduct Authority and lay a complaint, or the Fires Ombudsman. And for example, the Council for Medical Schemes, you have medical schemes that don't want to pay members' benefits, or you have those kind of disputes. So it's always dealing and servicing the public in every way. But what really influenced me to really serve on these boards is that we must remember that regulatory institutions are the checks and balances to make sure that government does its work properly and that citizens don't abuse their powers. So if you have strong regulatory bodies that are governing in different sectors, you can have a strong government system. And that is very important because that is where all this corruption starts. We know what had happened with the Zondo Commission of Inquiry and all of the stuff that came out of there, all the corruption scandals and all of the aspects that came out of there. So I felt that as I was going into this, it was not just, it really interested me, and I really wanted to do this work because on the one hand, I realized there was a need for strong leadership because I did a lot of leadership skills and negotiation, especially with that Harvard course. And then I also understood that when you sitting in meetings and corporate governance aspects such as the Council for Medical Schemes, you need to understand the environment that you work in. And in order to do that, you have to be able to communicate, know how to negotiate and how to speak and how to reach, some kind of a roundtable meeting or something of the sort. So that is why I got myself involved in all of these institutions. And it also has given me a great footing in terms of leadership and also a knowledge on a great spectrum of different fields.
It must have given you tremendous exposure into different fields, and that notion of accountability, the checks and balances, and ensuring that everything is regulated correctly. So coming back into the legal aspects of the conversation, since 2013, you've been called upon to serve as an acting judge, amassing experience and exposure to a variety of cases. Can you tell us about a few of the most significant cases or ones that you feel have had a big impact on you that have crossed your courtroom?
Yeah, well, the one matter which I think that affects women and, well, just parents generally is the one that I represented a government institution in respect of Rule 43 orders. Now, we know that Rule 43 orders, these are interim orders that you would get pending the outcome of a divorce matter. So it's an interim order, and if you're not happy with it, you cannot appeal against it. But there was an argument on the other side that they have no option and the rule is unconstitutional because parties cannot ask for relief otherwise. And the court then extended the purview of the rule to say, no, it's not only in terms of one bite at the cherry. If you need to vary the order, you can go back to court and you can actually ask for the court to vary the order, provided that you have a case. So for me, that was a very huge impact for all parents, because I think that in every marriage at some time, we know there's so many failed marriages, and we know that you can't get divorced immediately or you can't get your papers done as fast enough. So in the meantime, there are children involved, there are maintenance issues, there's custody issues. So this is very important. And for me, that was significant in that sense. And then another matter was the legal profession. It was the matter of Proxy Smart. I can't remember all the parties, but in that matter, there was an application made by an institution to say that it dealt with conveyancing, that lawyers don't have the monopoly to transfer properties. You know, the whole lodging the deed with the master, etc. That all the other peripheral work can be generalized work and can be done by other institutions. And then the court looked at that and said that, firstly, it wasn't actually a hard ruling, but the court said that they did not make out a case on that basis because lawyers, or at least conveyancers, are the ones that have been provided with this power to do the transfer of properties with the deeds registries, and nobody else can take it away, because you can't have peripheral institutions or financial institutions trying to take away that work.
The thing that has really struck me over this series is the fact that legislation can change, that it evolves on a continual basis. One of the things which really stood out for me, for example, was the recognition of Muslim marriages, changes to the maintenance claims, amendments to the Criminal Law Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Act bill. In your view, what do you consider to be other important recent changes or reforms to further gender equality?
I haven't done much work research on this point. I know there's all these changes on the maintenance claims, but I still feel that there's a lot of room that we actually have to develop, particularly in the criminal field sector, especially with sexual violence matters, especially rape. The women don't have that support structure. They don't have the basis. We have a lot of these NGOs and other institutions that try to support women, but really, we really need something very substantial. Somebody needs to know, if I get raped, this is exactly what I need to follow, And so apart from the labeling and not being supported, already you feel like, did you do something wrong, So for me, every time I see a rape case on appeal, I find that a woman hasn't been given that support or that basis to say, okay, I am a rape victim. Now let me start from here. It's very difficult because she has to start from the bottom. So she hasn't got any support. And I think that in that aspect, we really need to develop something, either change the act in some way or to give it a specific provision, because for me, I think that's a very serious injustice to women. And especially young girls, they are teenage rapes or, young girls and children. Parents don't even know what to do when that happens, So apart from the socioeconomic circumstances you find yourself in, the justice system must put something in place, and I'm saying this not because I've worked in that field face to face in the regional courts or even in the magistrates court or even in the high courts with this type of matters. But I see it from time to time whenever I see an appeal, and I feel that was the victim or the complainant given a fair chance in these matters.
Like you say, there's victimization, there is trauma, there is having to relive this experience each time you go through the process. Today, we're talking to Judge Harshila Kooverjie from the Gauteng Division of the High Court. We would love to receive your comments on Twitter at Womanity Talk. Judge Kooverjie, we're towards the end of August, and every year South Africa celebrates Women's Month in August. And I find it's a period for reflection on the progress that we've made, but also in terms of future thinking of the direction and the route that we want to go into. This year's theme is Generation Equality, realizing women's rights for an equal future. If you could please share with us in the short to medium term, what types of interventions do you think could be applied to help further reduce the inequalities that women still experience today?
That is such a hard question. This is such this topic about women and women's rights and women, I think, comes just from education. For me, if you educate, and more recently, it's surprising me that you actually mentioned Michelle Obama's little quote, but her husband, the president, also stated that, with a nation cannot survive without a woman. A mother is the essence of a nation. And until people don't understand, and until people are not educated and in respecting women and acknowledging what a woman means in society, we're not going to have that change. So for me, medium term or long term or short term is, for me, I think it's education. Because maybe 3 decades ago or 4 decades ago, most women stayed at home. And now with 2 decades ago, everyone is working. The problem that we have is that a woman is juggling her career and her family life, but no one has actually made room for that. For example, we should have institutions where mothers feel safe to leave their children so that they can go to work. We have a lot of single parents. And, that is something that I think that government needs to step in. We have in other countries where you have the support structures where they provide for in schools. If a teacher if there's babies or whatever, they have creches in the institutions or the buildings or, in corporate. for a woman in a corporate field or even in a private sector, even in the legal field, it's very hard because you're supposed to research till the late hours of the morning, supposed to be ready and face your opponent in court, whereas your opponent went home. His wife had given him a warm meal. He didn't have to worry about the children. And he comes with his dark suit looking all well and fine. And you still wondered, did you pack your child's cereal in the bag so that, for the crèche? It's terrible. So I had to live like that. And I just think that we need people to understand and make it easy for women. So medium or long term or short term, until you don't understand the value of a woman and until you don't educate your nation, and that starts from schools, then you're never going to be able to achieve anything.
And when we're talking education here, this isn't just a case of book smart education. This is about educating society about traditional gender stereotypical roles that have been perpetuated and actually need to change.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff. We also know what we have with government. We have this, every time we see this, we have this charter for gender rights and put Parliament's mandate to make sure that women are representatives, and we have these objectives. Putting stuff on paper does not help. It's for decades. We started with a 1956 March for Women, for the gender equality and equal access to justice and, women being recognized. And all you're having is a charter, but you go back home and the same story works. Until a child doesn't know, and until a man doesn't know, and until a woman herself doesn't know her real worth, it's going to be very hard. We're just going to be stuck in this for years to come.
And sometimes I wonder if it isn't also to do with the fact that unpaid labor, the labor that happens in the home, from the cooking, the cleaning, the organizing children, the looking after elderly parents, the fact that that hasn't been quantified at a cost point of view, that there isn't a value attributed to it, that it almost further undervalues women. Whereas if you go out into the work environment, you receive a salary, and that piece of work equates to a financial value.
Yes, that is very degrading for a mother, for a woman that has to sit at home. Sometimes it's not her choice, but she has no option. And I don't know, we have to, private society cannot do it. And if government has their ducks in a row and has all, consider that, women not working but have children should also receive some kind of grant, but it shouldn't be subject to abuse as well. It's a difficult issue.
True. If it was easy, it would be solved and we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can't take the matter any further. It's just, even if you're not going to have the state interfering, it's the family, the nuclear family or the extended family that need to appreciate the value of a woman,
Absolutely. Turning towards more of a personal perspective, when I look at your qualifications on your CV, you had your BA in 1990 from the University of the Witwatersrand, going on to a period of further study. And in 2019, you did a negotiation and leadership course at Harvard Law School. It really demonstrates this habit of lifelong learning. Please, can you tell us about the role of education in your life and the impact that it's had on your career?
I think, yes. So I believe that, one has to educate oneself all the time. Even if I qualified years ago, in order to stay on top of the game and make sure that because you work in a very competitive environment. There are so many of you that, it's about picking and choosing. So if you want to be the best or you want to work at the best, you need to educate yourself. So for me, education was very important. And it was very hard because you must understand that even when I was at the bar, when I was still, the day that I was writing my last paper for my exam, my LLB, I went into labor and I couldn't write my last paper. But I persevered and I was resilient and I breastfed while studying and I did all of that. So you can never give up. I think you should be you should open yourself up to the fact that you're starting at the bottom of the ladder and you're going to grow. And you're going to have a lot of adversities in your life, a lot of obstacles. But you bypass them in many ways, because at the end of the day, you have one vision, and you need to have a vision. You need to have a vision where you want to be. Sometimes you don't really know where you want to be. You get taken by surprise in terms of where you get employed or what kind of work you do. But whenever a door opens, grab the opportunity and work at it, and, take it and learn. I think that if you have these three qualities, humility, the willingness to learn, and respect, you will go very far in life. Because you even sitting as a judge, you learn all the time. You get different matters. You will never, and you need to listen. So it's never about everything. So I think if you have those three characteristics, a willingness to learn, always being humble, knowing that you don't know everything, and working in the environment, making, and being amicable to the, if you're working in a big environment or in a business environment, working as a group instead of working for yourself, and not being selfish and sharing, you will really grow, because you reap what you sow, right? So, and in that way, I've helped a lot of female juniors, Black female juniors, Black male juniors, because they had similar problems. They would come, start off at the bar, they would have family and mouths to feed, but they had no work. So I would bring them in, let them do deviling, and I'll pay them from my own pocket, because clients don't always want to brief a second advocate. So in that way, I've helped a lot. I've also exposed them to the specialized fields that I was in, that I was operating in. So if there were hearings or if there was research to be done, and I would let them sit in them and let them learn. So that's what I did. So I know even now I would really love to study, but I don't know whether I have enough time right now.
While listening to your journey, going into labor whilst you're in the middle of doing your exams, and then still persevering, that shows dedication, perseverance, and juggling those realities of motherhood. Today, we're talking to Judge Harshila Kooverjie from the Gauteng Division of the High Court. We would love to receive your comments on Twitter at Womanity Talk. I wanted to ask you a question about reflection, because obviously we all walk our journeys, we've got our paths that are put in place, but sometimes if we could do things in a different way, maybe we would if we had the opportunity of going back in time. So if we could wind the clock back, would there be anything that you would have done differently?
Yeah, I would perhaps, I wouldn't have done anything differently in the path that I followed. But one thing that what I would like to really share is that, because women feel you're competing, well, in the field that I am, you're competing with your male counterparts, and you never think that you are good enough, and you don't have the self-worth. So what do? You're always triple checking and double checking and making sure that you are on top of the game, when in reality you are on top of the game. So what I would have done differently is not to question my confidence, but to rather be confident and know that I've done whatever I had to do, whatever research had to be done, or in presenting my matters and walking there, and not think about, oh my God, I am against this big senior white male advocate who knows the law, because it's a matter of research. So I think that learning, researching, doing your work, and then going in with confidence. And I did not do that all the time, especially in my early years. I would always question. Even now, I tend to go into moments where I question my judgments and say, well, do I know enough? Have I said enough? Did I put enough information in? Does the reader understand this? Is this a bad judgment? And I think that you have to stop.
Being able to trust your ability and run with it, as opposed to having these self-doubts.
Yeah.
The next question that I wanted to ask you now is about your personal journey and factors for success. So many of our guests on the show have reached tremendous achievements in their respective fields, and they often speak about various factors. Some include discipline, others include focus, faith, values, a particular person in their life. Can you share with us what have been some of the factors that have contributed to your success?
One of the factors that contributed largely to my success was at the age of 5, I was, due to the apartheid years, and that was in the early 70s, we had to leave home. We had to leave home to go to schools and stay with relatives who lived in the areas where we could go to those schools. I had to travel 600 kilometers away from my parents, and I would only see them twice a year. That separation made me grow and understand that I felt very alone. And it was almost like living in a hostel for 12 years because you didn't really have, Mom, I need this, Dad, I need this. So it was very hard, but it made me grow strong and it made me become independent. I think that if I did not have that experience and taken out of my comfort zone, I wouldn't be as determined and as independent and ensuring that I take care of myself on all levels, 100%. That is economically, financially, emotionally, and in every other way.
I can imagine it must have been a challenging environment, especially being so young, because you grow up in an environment which is comfortable, you've got family values, you've got love, you've got support. But then when you are removed from that environment and put into a completely different set of circumstances with strangers, it is very challenging.
Yes, it was. But I think that also the fact that I had to leave home, I was living with relatives, but in that environment, we were taught discipline, we were taught, time management, we were taught focus, we were taught our faith, in our religion. So all of those aspects came in. So, living a life where you would just get up one morning and decide, I don't feel like doing this, wasn't on the cards. You had a routine. And I think the routine and the discipline, how to dress, how to talk to people, how as a woman or a girl you approach people. You don't just sit around when there's a lot of guys around. The old school, how we were taught and brought up, your elders, how to respect and talk to them, and also manage time. You'll be writing your matric exam, but if there's prayer time, you need to go and put away 2 hours of the day for that. So that also influenced me to have some kind of routine or plan my day every day. I cannot pass a day if I didn't plan. In the morning, I need to set out what I'm going to do. Even if it's leisure, I need to say, okay, well, today I'm going to relax, but I want to do this while I'm relaxing.
So good habits die hard.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about some of your motivations for wanting to go into the legal system and points of influence that directed you to this space?
Well, I think when I applied to study law, I wasn't fastidious on knowing that I want to become a lawyer. I didn't have an uncle in a legal fraternity or a brother or anyone. But I think for me, justice and fairness was a very strong character that I felt. If I felt somebody is being unfair to someone, even just by not sharing, sweets or, friends not being fair to another, that used to affect me. And I see that all today, especially when you have litigants coming to court, they get bullied by counsel and big institutions like a bank. And you get this man on the street that said, I have paid, I only owe this much. And I've told them that I'm going to pay this by the end of the month. You kind of identify with the unfairness, but you also appreciate that there's law and there's processes in place. So for me, that is one thing that influenced me. But as I went into the legal field, in the early years, everyone had to have a career those days. So you have done that. But I started enjoying being an advocate thoroughly because it gave me that balance of being a mother, working at flexible times, looking at interesting things. And I think a very inherent character of mine is I love research. So I love advocacy in that way. And as I honed into it and got into the field, I started specializing, because when I left, I was specializing in the financial industry services sector. And I was also working on the international level, drafting papers for other government bodies. So for me, it was about, yes, I enjoyed my work. I think one thing that you need to understand is that if you're going to study something, if you're not going to enjoy it, you're never going to have satisfaction. I enjoyed my work. For me, it was like, I was very driven. So you can only become driven if you enjoy what you're doing.
True. It's almost perpetuating, so it feeds on itself. As we're in Women's Month, please can you tell us which women have been some of the role models or influences in your life?
Well, I think that firstly, my mother, and one thing about her was her resilience. A woman that had to part with her children, but always had a smiling face, that never complained about the fact that she couldn't be with her children. And she was very fair, she was very assertive. So in that way, I think that just on a character level, it was my mum. I didn't spend many years with her or a long time with her, but if ever I would want to have a character trait, would be someone like my mother. She was a peaceful soul. She was never unfair. She was, not an evil person. She was just, everyone loved her, So I think your character of humility, respect, give love, accept, those kind of things is something that I looked up to insofar as my mother's concerned. Insofar as my professional growth is concerned, I always followed Justice Mokgoro, that is Yvonne Mokgoro. She was the first woman appointed to the Constitutional Bench, one of the first women. And our Constitutional Court just started in early 1996, and she was one of the first women that was approached by the president to sit as a Constitutional Court judge. Over the years, I have got to know her on a professional level because we worked on the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. She was the chair of that Financial Sector Appeal Board. And just the fact that she was so young when she went to the Constitutional Court and that she achieved so much. Not just as a Constitutional Court judge. She stopped working as a Constitutional Court judge, but she was involved in so many international forums, either as a chair or as a member, and she kept on contributing, and she still contributes. And for me, that is a role model. I wouldn't want to stop working when I retire. I would like to contribute something to society.
Continuing with that thought of contributions to society, because we've kind of spoken about the pre-life, the current life, moving towards the future, what would you like your legacy to be?
Well, in that regard, I'd like to be seen eventually as someone who has developed the law, and I would like to be seen as a judge who is, well-rounded, understood the law, who applied mind properly, and also and further could relate to the challenges, in disputes, especially at the ground level. I would also like to be seen as somebody that people would look up to, so that you can help them and guide them and direct them in their careers or in their lives, or give advice. So it doesn't just have to be on the judiciary front. It doesn't also just have to be in the legal fraternity, but and especially women and young children, and especially society that cannot afford, members of society cannot afford fees for education. I really like to get involved in that sector. So, and be remembered as someone who's helped society from the educational level.
One of my key takeouts of today's conversation will really be about your view of serving the public. As we close out today's conversation and almost end Women's Month, Please will you share a few words of inspiration that you'd like to pass on to women and girls in the continent that are listening to the show?
Can just give me a moment. I like to really tell young budding of students or even young women that firstly, know that you are worthy and that you never need to question yourself. That's the most important thing, because if you know your self-worth, then you will be able to be confident. You will be able to approach your work on a more confident basis, and you will be able to achieve much more in your career and in your personal life as well, and for your family, because you'll be able to take that confidence to your children. And second thing is that you must always be ready to learn, because you never stop learning. So whether you have a family, there is no excuse. I believe that people that say they don't have time and that sit at home, and those are not the ones that don't have the financial means. Those are the ones with the financial means. They are just lazy, because you can make a life. Even if you start your own business, you can do something. The third thing is that pride and ego are the worst characteristics to have. If you want to excel, yes, they say women, if you want to excel, you need to make sure that you have humility, but you have respect for yourself, and that just don't put yourself on the back footing. And when there are opportunities, grab those opportunities and go for them and learn, and access those opportunities so that you can grow. And that's all I can say now.
Well, thank you very much for those points. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
No, thank you so much. I really do feel honored, and I hope that I added some value. But thank you once again.
No, we appreciate your perspective and your commitment to public service. You have been listening to Womanity, Women in Unity, and we have been talking to Judge Harshila Kooverjie from the Gauteng Division of the High Court in Pretoria.